The cabin was never meant to be a home. It was meant to be a warning. They said the wind screamed through its chimney like a dying man. They said shadows moved behind the frostbitten windows even when no one was inside. They said the last man who tried to live there vanished before the first snowfall melted. But a broken warrior with nothing left to lose does not fear ghost stories. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because people like you keep them alive. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Hayes had survived things that would have shattered most men. As a Navy SEAL, he had walked through fire in deserts thousands of miles away, moved silently through cities torn apart by war, and carried brothers off battlefields under skies lit by gunfire. But nothing prepared him for the quiet. The quiet after retirement was louder than explosions. When he returned home, there were no missions, no commands in his earpiece, no purpose carved in orders. There were just sleepless nights and memories that refused to stay buried. The doctors called it adjustment. The therapists called it trauma. Daniel called it weakness, and that was something he had never tolerated in himself. The only steady presence in his life was Rex, a sable-coated German shepherd with sharp eyes and an instinct that never dulled. Rex had served beside him overseas, trained to detect danger before it struck. The dog had saved Daniel's life twice. Maybe 3 times. They had bled in the same dust. They had survived together. So when Daniel saw the listing for the cabin, $500, cash only, sold as is, he didn't hesitate. The real estate agent wouldn't step onto the property. She stood by her car, arms folded tightly against the cold, and said the previous owner had disappeared. The locals in the nearby town of Pine Hollow claimed the place was cursed. No one would touch it. The land alone was worth more than the asking price. Daniel didn't believe in curses. He believed in bargains. The cabin stood in the middle of a vast pine forest, snow scattered across the ground like forgotten ash. The structure was old but sturdy, built from thick logs and anchored by a stone chimney that leaned slightly to one side. It had survived decades of winters. It would survive a few more. He signed the papers on the hood of a truck. $500. A haunted cabin for less than the cost of a decent rifle. The first night inside, the cold crept into his bones. The fireplace coughed smoke before the flames caught properly. The walls groaned with the wind. Rex paced the perimeter, nose twitching, ears alert. Daniel lay on a thin mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling beams. Around midnight, something scraped beneath the floorboards. Daniel's eyes snapped open. Instinct surged through him like electricity. He reached for the pistol resting beside him. Rex froze, head tilted toward the far corner of the room. The scraping came again. Slow. Deliberate. Daniel moved silently, each step controlled. He had cleared buildings under enemy fire. An old cabin wasn't going to unnerve him. He crouched near the sound and tapped the floor with his knuckles. Hollow. The noise stopped. Rex let out a low growl, deep in his chest. Daniel waited. Nothing. By morning, sunlight spilled through the frost-lined windows, and the fear of the night felt foolish. Old houses made old sounds. Rodents nested under floors. Wood expanded and contracted. Still, Rex refused to leave that corner. He sniffed, pawed once, then sat rigidly, staring at the planks as if they concealed something alive. Daniel brushed it off and spent the day cleaning. He hauled out broken furniture, scrubbed soot from the stone fireplace, patched gaps in the roof. Sweat poured down his back despite the cold air. Physical labor steadied him. It gave his hands purpose. But that night, the scraping returned. This time it wasn't random. It followed a pattern. 3 short scrapes. A pause. 2 long drags. Rex barked sharply, startling Daniel from sleep. Daniel grabbed a crowbar from his pack and approached the corner. He knelt, pressed his ear to the floor. Silence. Then, a faint thud from beneath. Not an animal. Too measured. His heart pounded in a way it hadn't since combat. Not fear. Anticipation. He wedged the crowbar between two planks and pried. The first board splintered. Dust and decades of debris rose into the air. Rex backed away slightly but kept his eyes fixed on the opening. Beneath the planks lay packed dirt. Daniel dug. Minutes stretched. His fingers hit something solid. Wood. A small hatch, nearly invisible under layers of earth. His pulse quickened. The hatch had no handle on top. It was meant to be hidden. Rex whined softly. Daniel hesitated for the first time since buying the place. The stories from town crept back into his mind. Disappearances. Curses. Haunted ground. He shook his head. Fear was a luxury. He drove the crowbar under the edge and forced it upward. The hatch gave way with a crack, revealing darkness below. A narrow ladder descended into what looked like a small underground room. Cold air rushed up, carrying a faint metallic scent. Daniel switched on his flashlight and aimed it down. The beam revealed wooden walls reinforced with metal brackets. Shelves lined one side. On the ground sat a heavy steel trunk, its surface coated in rust. No bodies. No bones. He descended slowly, Rex waiting anxiously above. The underground chamber was barely tall enough to stand in. It felt less like a bunker and more like a hiding place. The trunk had a thick padlock. Daniel studied it, running a hand over the metal. The metallic scent was stronger here. He thought about leaving it alone. About sealing the hatch and pretending he had found nothing. But that wasn't who he was. He climbed back up, retrieved bolt cutters from his gear, and returned below. The lock resisted at first. Then snapped. The sound echoed in the tight space. Daniel lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of old journals, wrapped carefully in oilcloth. Beneath them, bundles of cash sealed in plastic. Hundreds. Thousands. More than he could count at a glance. But it wasn't the money that made his breath catch. It was the final object at the bottom of the trunk. A folded military flag. Daniel's hands trembled as he lifted it. He unfolded it slowly, revealing the stars and stripes, perfectly preserved. Tucked inside the folds was a photograph. A man in uniform stood beside a cabin that looked identical to this one. The date on the back was from 30 years ago. Daniel studied the face. Recognition struck like lightning. The man in the photo was Samuel Reeves, a former SEAL who had vanished after leaving the service decades earlier. Daniel had heard whispers about him during training. A legend. Brilliant. Mysterious. And officially listed as missing. Daniel sat back on his heels. This wasn't a haunted cabin. It was a secret. He spent hours reading the journals by firelight. Samuel's handwriting filled page after page. Entries detailed covert missions never acknowledged publicly. Operations buried in classified silence. Betrayals. A final mission that went wrong. According to the last entries, Samuel had uncovered corruption within a private defense contractor tied to illegal arms trades. Powerful names were scribbled in coded references. He had gathered evidence and retreated to the cabin, planning to expose them. Then the journal entries stopped abruptly. No explanation. No goodbye. Daniel stared at the last page until the fire burned low. Someone had silenced Samuel. The money in the trunk was likely hush money, or funds he intended to use to protect himself. Rex rested his head on Daniel's knee, sensing the shift in his energy. Daniel realized something heavy and undeniable. The cabin hadn't been abandoned because it was haunted. It had been abandoned because someone wanted it forgotten. Over the next few days, Daniel searched every inch of the property. He found a rusted surveillance camera hidden high in a tree, long dead but proof that someone had once monitored the place. He found tire tracks beyond the tree line, old but not ancient. And one night, he saw headlights in the distance. A vehicle idled briefly at the edge of the forest before turning away. Daniel's blood ran cold. Someone knew. He packed the journals carefully and secured the trunk. He contacted a former teammate, now working in investigative journalism, and arranged a discreet meeting in the nearest city. Handing over the journals felt like handing over a live grenade. Within weeks, quiet inquiries began. Old contracts resurfaced. Financial trails were re-examined. The defense contractor named in the journals was suddenly under scrutiny for activities dating back decades. Daniel returned to the cabin and waited. One evening, just after sunset, a black SUV rolled up the dirt road. Two men stepped out. They didn't knock. Daniel was ready. Years of training sharpened his senses. He had anticipated this moment. He stood on the porch, Rex by his side, posture calm but unyielding. The men spoke little, asking vague questions about the property. About whether he had found anything unusual. Daniel met their gaze steadily and told them the cabin was just wood and stone. Nothing more. They studied him, calculating. Then they left. But their visit confirmed everything. Days later, news broke publicly. The investigation had uncovered a long-buried scandal. Illegal weapons contracts. Missing funds. Evidence tampering. Samuel Reeves' disappearance was reopened as a homicide case. The story spread quickly. And for the first time in 30 years, Samuel's name was spoken with honor instead of suspicion. A memorial service was held in Pine Hollow. The town that once whispered about ghosts now gathered in silence. Daniel stood at the edge of the crowd, holding the folded flag recovered from the trunk. Rex sat beside him, steady and proud. The cold wind swept through the pines, but this time it didn't sound like screaming. It sounded like release. Daniel placed the flag into the hands of Samuel's surviving sister, an elderly woman with tear-filled eyes. She clutched it to her chest as if holding her brother for the first time in decades. And in that moment, Daniel felt something shift inside him. The quiet no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. He returned to the cabin, not as a haunted man hiding from memories, but as a guardian of something meaningful. He repaired the porch fully, reinforced the roof, and built a small wooden sign at the edge of the property. Reeves' Retreat. A place for veterans who needed silence without loneliness. A place to rest. To heal. Word spread quietly among former service members. Men and women arrived carrying invisible burdens. They chopped wood, shared meals, sat by the fire. No one asked for details. No one forced stories. Rex greeted each newcomer gently, as if understanding that some wounds needed forepaws and quiet companionship more than words. Daniel discovered that purpose wasn't found in missions assigned. It was found in missions chosen. The haunted cabin had not been cursed. It had been waiting. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that even the darkest places can become sanctuaries, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to support more stories of courage and redemption. And before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word honor below to show respect for those who serve and for the secrets that should never stay buried. On the first anniversary of Samuel's memorial, snow fell softly over Pine Hollow. Daniel stood outside the cabin, watching flakes settle on the roof that had once frightened an entire town. Rex leaned against his leg, older now, slower, but still vigilant. The forest was quiet. Not the suffocating silence that once haunted Daniel's nights. But a gentle, living quiet. He realized that sometimes the ghosts we fear are not spirits in the dark. They are truths waiting to be uncovered. And sometimes, it takes a loyal dog, a $500 cabin, and a broken warrior brave enough to pry open the floorboards of the past to set those truths free. The wind moved through the trees again. This time, it sounded like gratitude.